All right, let's jump into a world full of secrets and deception today. The world of spies. You know, the ones who operate in the shadows, shaping history with their secret missions.
It's a really fascinating world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
It's not just about stealing secrets either.
Yeah.
It's about seeing the ambitions and anxieties and betrayals of entire societies.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so we have an article here
So-
from History Hit called 8 of the Most Notorious Spies in History.
Nice.
And it's got all these crazy stories that make you question everything you thought you knew
I love it.
about history. Yeah.
Yeah.
So today we're going beyond just who did what. We
Right.
want to know what made these people tick, what drove them to this life, and how their actions, rippled through time.
You'll see a huge variety too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about people from totally different eras, backgrounds, different methods, motivations, the whole thing.
Love it. Okay, so the article starts out
All right.
by reminding us that spying is basically as old as civilization itself.
Makes sense.
I know, right? The Romans, they had their speculators, like elite scouts slipping behind enemy lines.
Right.
That's crazy.
It is crazy to think that's been going on for so long.
I know. It's amazing to think about just how long humans have been thirsty for secret knowledge.
I think it just shows something fundamental about us.
Yeah.
It's wanting to know what other people don't.
Yeah.
To get an advantage, to protect ourselves.
Right.
And as societies got more complex, well, so did the spying.
Makes sense. Speaking of complex societies and secrets, let's jump to Elizabethan England and meet Sir Francis Walsingham,
Oh, yes.
Queen Elizabeth I's spy master.
Yeah,
This was a crazy time
it was.
with tons of religious and political turmoil,
Yeah.
There were plots against the Queen constantly.
Right. Leaves in a storm.
Exactly. And Walsingham had to be at the top of his game to keep her safe.
He was really something.
Yeah.
He wasn't just reacting to threats. He was like creating the whole intelligence world.
Oh, wow.
He got it. Information was power.
Right.
So he made this network of informants, code breakers, double agents, you name it,
Wow.
just to stay ahead of his enemies, like a spider in a web waiting for its prey.
That's both awesome and kind of scary.
Yeah.
Haha.
Yeah.
So the article says that he was essential in stopping the Spanish Armada,
Oh, absolutely.
which was a huge threat to England back then.
It was a huge deal. And he didn't just use brute force either.
Right.
His people were intercepting letters, cracking codes, and even feeding the Spanish misinformation.
Really?
Yeah, that kind of sophisticated intelligence gathering was unheard of back then.
Wow.
Yeah, he's like the grandfather of modern intelligence agencies.
Hmm.
Yeah, even MI5 today, their coat of arms has a rose on it.
Oh, wow.
A nod to the one Walsingham used on his seal.
Mhm.
Talk about a legacy.
Wow. To think that modern espionage has such deep roots. But spying isn't always about, shadowy figures behind the scenes.
Right.
Sometimes it's about people who jump right into the action.
You think about Belle Boyd.
Yes. Now, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, she's quite a character.
She was a Confederate spy in the Civil War and wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty.
No, she wasn't.
The article says she even killed a Union soldier.
It's true.
Yeah, he insulted her and her mother, and Belle just took care of it.
Wow.
I guess that was her introduction into the world of espionage.
I guess you could say that, yeah.
So after that incident,
Mhm.
it put her in the spotlight, and she became really important to the Confederacy.
Right, but what made her good was how she manipulated people.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she used her charm and wit and connections to get information for the South. Like a master manipulator, getting secrets from Union soldiers just by talking to them.
So she was like a 19th century socialite spy.
Basically, yeah.
It's crazy to think how she could just be in those circles and gather intel right under their noses.
And even when they caught her and put her in prison.
What?
Oh, yeah. She still got information from a prison guard.
Are you serious?
Yeah, even behind bars, she was still spying.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about making the most of a bad situation.
Wow. Belle Boyd really shows us that spies can be anyone.
She does. She really does.
It wasn't about blending in for her. It was about using her social status
Yeah,
to
sure.
her advantage.
Yeah.
But, speaking of defying expectations, the world of espionage is full of mysterious figures.
Ah, you're leading us to Mata Hari,
Yes.
the exotic dancer. Her life was like a spy novel,
I know, right?
full of seduction and secrets and so many unanswered questions.
Exactly. She's a legend, but her story is one of the most debated in espionage history.
It really is.
Was she a femme fatale, using her charm to get secrets? Or was she just a pawn used by both sides and didn't really affect the war?
Right.
The article mentions arguments for both sides.
There's no clear answer.
Yeah, even today, historians disagree about what she really did. Some say she caused thousands of deaths.
It's wild.
Others think her role was totally blown out of proportion.
It's that mystery that makes her so interesting, though.
Right.
Yeah, we might never know the full truth, but her name is now synonymous with using seduction as a weapon.
It's like she represents the ultimate spy fantasy, you know?
Yeah.
The beautiful, mysterious woman moving between fancy parties and dark alleys.
And it makes you think, how do we measure a spy's success? Is it just about the information they get, or is it about the influence they have?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Mata Hari, whether she was a master manipulator or just a pawn, she embodies that question.
That's a great point. And it's something to keep in mind as we look at these other figures.
Right.
But let's shift gears now and talk about a spy whose motives were all about revenge.
You mean Fritz Hubert Duquesne?
Yes. His story shows how personal vendettas can turn into global conflicts.
Powerful, yeah.
So he was born in South Africa and saw the British brutality during the Boer War.
Yeah.
And that experience, it gave him a deep hatred for the British Empire, which led him to become a German spy in World War I.
Right.
And he wasn't a typical spy either. He was a master saboteur. Can you imagine this? He pretended to be a scientist, snuck onto British ships, and planted bombs.
He was ruthless
I know.
and effective.
Wow. Some people even think he sank the HMS Hampshire.
The British warship.
Yeah, the one with a top British official on board. Talk about a blow struck from the shadows.
Wow.
It's scary to think how much damage just one person can do, especially when they're driven by something like that.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about the psychological effects of war. What makes someone snap like that?
Duquesne's story shows that espionage isn't always about patriotism or ideology.
True.
Sometimes it's deeply personal,
Ganby.
rooted in trauma and revenge.
Right, the Boer War was brutal, and it left a lot of people scarred. For Duquesne, those scars turned into a need for revenge.
It's a reminder that even in a world of deception, human emotions are still powerful.
They are.
But for now, let's move from Duquesne to someone completely different.
Okay.
Lise de Bessac.
Oh, yes.
Her story takes us to Nazi-occupied France during World War II.
A very dangerous time and place.
So, yeah.
One wrong move could be deadly.
Absolutely.
So Lise was a member of the Special Operations Executive, or SOE.
The British organization, right?
Yeah, a top secret group that did espionage and sabotage behind enemy lines.
Very brave people.
So imagine this.
Mm.
Lise pretended to be an archaeologist, went into Nazi-occupied France, and worked undercover for a long time.
Wow.
She was one of the few women to take on a role that dangerous.
She was incredible.
I know, right? It shows incredible bravery and resourcefulness.
Absolutely.
The article talks about how good she was at blending in.
Yeah.
She used her cover as an archaeologist to gather information,
Right.
collect weapons, and even organize resistance networks.
Right under the noses of the Nazis.
It's like she was a ghost, moving through France, planting the seeds of resistance.
And she didn't just gather information, she helped other agents and resistance leaders escape back to England.
Wow, she was putting her life on the line over and over.
She
To
was...
save other people.
Yeah, she worked so hard to undermine the Nazis from the inside. Lise de Bessac's story shows that courage comes in many forms.
It does.
It's not always about big, bold actions, but about quiet determination,
Right.
an unwavering commitment to doing what's right, even when it's dangerous.
She was a hero working in the shadows.
Yeet.
Her story deserves to be told.
It does.
And it shows us how important it is to be adaptable.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Lise had to be constantly adjusting, changing her identity, staying one step ahead.
It's like she was playing a high-stakes game of chess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Always thinking several moves ahead.
Speaking of high-stakes games, let's talk about Dusan Popov.
Oh, yeah.
He was a double agent for MI6 during World War II,
Right.
and his story involves one of the biggest what-ifs of the whole war.
He was the one who tried to warn everyone about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. It's a story full of intrigue, betrayal, and missed opportunities.
Yeah, a story that could have changed everything.
So Popov found out from his German contacts that the Japanese were planning to attack Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
He told the FBI, but for some reason, they didn't take him seriously.
It's hard to believe.
I know, right?
Yeah,
And the result was a devastating surprise attack.
a tragedy.
It's so sad.
It is, and it shows how even the best intelligence can be useless if no one acts on it.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
But even after that, Popov kept working as a spy.
He did.
He was known for his daring operations
Oh, yeah.
and his skill at navigating the world of double agents.
That's like something out of a movie.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And get this. Some people think he was the inspiration for James Bond.
That's right. He worked with Ian Fleming, the guy who created James Bond.
Wow.
And when you look at Popov's life, the charm, the risks, the lifestyle, it makes sense.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it adds a whole new level of intrigue to his story.
It's like something out of a movie. But then again, the line between fact and fiction in the world of espionage is often so blurry.
Very true.
And speaking of blurred lines and shocking betrayals, let's talk about Anthony Blunt.
Ah, yes, Anthony Blunt, the art historian, the royal confidant, and the Soviet spy.
Hard to believe.
A really unsettling story.
The article makes him sound like he was living a double life.
He was.
During the day, he was this respected art historian managing the Queen's art collection, but secretly he was a communist working for the Soviets and betraying his own country.
Unbelievable.
It's mind-boggling to think that someone so close to British power could be a double agent.
And the betrayal was huge.
It was.
He wasn't just gossiping. He was leaking classified documents, putting lives at risk.
Oh.
The amount of information he gave to the Soviets during World War II is just staggering.
That he got away with it for so long is crazy. What did he do to stay ahead of the game?
Blunt's story is a warning about blind trust.
It is.
You have to be careful, especially when dealing with sensitive information.
Right.
It shows that even the most trustworthy people can have hidden agendas.
It's scary to think about.
It is, yeah.
So that brings us to another huge betrayal.
Aldrich Ames.
Yeah, the CIA officer turned double agent.
It's a classic Cold War story.
It really is.
It reminds us that even in the top intelligence agencies, there's always potential for corruption.
So the article says that Ames used his job at the CIA to sell secrets to the Soviets.
It's true.
He was compromising U.S. operations and putting American agents in danger.
Offered money.
And he got millions of dollars for it deposited in a Swiss bank account. What a cold-hearted move.
It was a huge blow to the U.S.
It was.
That undermined American intelligence and created mistrust within the CIA itself.
It's hard to understand how someone could betray their colleagues and their country like that just for money.
Greed is a powerful motivator.
It is.
But Ames's case also makes you think about the system itself. How did he go undetected for so long? What did the CIA learn from this?
After Ames, the CIA made a lot of changes. They focused on strengthening security and making sure no one could exploit those weaknesses again.
It was a wake-up call for them.
It was
a reminder that even in places dedicated to national security, you need vigilance and accountability.
That's a good lesson for any organization.
It is.
It's a reminder that the world of espionage is full of danger, betrayal, and moral gray areas.
There are a lot of tough choices.
So before we move on, let's take a minute to reflect on what we've learned.
Go ahead.
We've gone from ancient Rome to the Cold War, and we've met so many different people driven by a whole mix of motives.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
We've seen how personal grudges, ideologies, and even just a thirst for adventure can lead people into the world of espionage.
It's clear that there's no one-size-fits-all definition of a spy.
Right.
But as we go into the next part of our deep dive, I'm curious about how the methods and motivations of spies might be changing in the digital age.
That's a great question.
I mean, it's a whole new world out there, isn't it?
It is. The tools have evolved, but have the motivations. That's what we'll look at next.
Okay, so stay tuned.
Welcome back. Before we go into the digital age of spying, I think we should talk a little more about Aldrich Ames.
Okay.
It wasn't all about money for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was disillusioned, like he felt unappreciated by the CIA.
That makes sense. It's one thing to be greedy, but to feel like your loyalty means nothing, that's gotta sting.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how many other Ameses are out there, right?
Right. People who are just waiting to snap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to a really important question. How do you stop betrayal in a world where people's emotions can be used against them?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a question that intelligence agencies have been struggling with forever.
Especially now in the digital age, things are so different, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The whole game has changed.
Yeah.
In the past, spying was about sneaking around, stealing papers, bugging rooms,
Right.
Real cloak and dagger stuff.
Yeah.
But now, so much of it is online.
So instead of breaking into a building, a spy could just hack a server from home.
Exactly. Data breaches, cyber attacks, manipulating social media. That's what spying looks like now.
It's wild.
It is. Remember Belle Boyd charming those Union soldiers? Well, today she'd be online, creating fake profiles, building trust, getting information without ever meeting anyone.
So social engineering has just gone digital.
You got it.
But even with all this technology, don't you think psychology is still at the heart of it?
Oh, absolutely. Understanding people, knowing their weaknesses, how to persuade them. Those are timeless skills.
That makes sense. So the tools might be different, but the basic principles of spying, deception, manipulation, understanding people, that's all still the same.
Exactly. It's just the playing field that's different.
Right. And what about catching spies?
Counterintelligence. Oh, that's changed too.
I bet.
Used to be about tailing people, planting bugs, intercepting mail.
Huh.
Now it's about analyzing data, looking for suspicious online activity, tracing information flows on the internet.
So instead of guys in trench coats, we have analysts staring at computer screens.
Pretty much, yeah. But even with the best algorithms and software, you still need human intuition.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, to see those connections, that big picture that a computer might miss.
Right.
Think about Sir Francis Walsingham. He didn't have fancy tech, but he was brilliant at piecing together information from his spies.
So it's not just about having the data, it's about knowing how to read it.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
have to think like a spy, anticipate their moves, understand what drives them.
That's so important.
Yeah, especially in the digital world where there's so many ways to trick people.
Like with deepfakes and all the misinformation online.
Exactly. It's hard to tell what's real anymore.
It really is.
And that brings up some serious ethical questions.
Yeah.
As technology gives us more power to watch people, collect data, manipulate them, where do we draw the line?
That's a big question.
It is. How do we balance national security with personal freedom and privacy?
Honestly, it's a little scary to think about how spying is changing.
Yeah, it can be.
But I guess that's the point, right? It's always changing, always finding new ways to exploit us.
Exactly. And that's why knowing the history of espionage is so important.
Oh, I see.
It helps us understand what's happening now and what might happen in the future.
Right.
By looking at what spies did in the past, we can figure out how to deal with the challenges of today.
It's like they say, those who can't remember the past are doomed to repeat it.
Exactly. By learning from past mistakes, we can be smarter about spying in the 21st century.
Okay, I'm ready for the next part then. Let's wrap things up and talk about the big picture.
Sounds good to me.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
It's been quite a journey so far.
It really has.
We've gone from shadowy Elizabethan England to double agents in World War II.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people who shaped history from behind the scenes.
And as we've learned, it's not a black and white world.
Right.
It's full of grays, where patriotism and betrayal mix, where ideology is a weapon and the pursuit of power often comes at a moral cost.
You know, thinking back on all these stories, betrayal really sticks out to me.
It's a big part of it, yeah.
Whether it's Anthony Blunt betraying his country, Aldrich Ames selling out his colleagues, or even Belle Boyd using her charm to deceive Union soldiers, there's always this element of deception.
Right.
It makes you wonder what living with all those secrets does to a person.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
To live a double life, constantly lying to everyone, it takes a certain kind of personality.
Right.
Some people might be driven by their beliefs, thinking the ends justify the means.
Mm-hmm.
Others might just want money or power.
Yeah.
And some might just crave adventure and danger.
And what about patriotism? We've seen spies who risked everything for their country.
Right.
But then there's someone like Anthony Blunt where patriotism didn't seem to matter as much.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if there can ever be a good spy or if it's a job that always involves compromise.
It's a question people have been asking for ages.
Yeah.
Can someone who lies and manipulates, betrays people still be considered good?
Right.
It's a gray area for sure.
Yep.
And everyone has to decide where they stand on that.
It's interesting to see how those moral dilemmas play out in different times and places.
It is, yeah.
And it's not just about personal morality, it's about the systems of power that these spies are part of.
Right.
Like Sir Francis Walsingham trying to protect Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah.
He was loyal to the crown, but his actions also reinforced the power structure of his time.
Exactly. And then you have someone like Dusan Popov, stuck between two sides, trying to figure out who to trust.
It's a complicated world.
It is.
His story shows how messy and dangerous espionage can be.
It really does.
It's a reminder that spying isn't just about stealing secrets.
Yeah.
It's about using information as a weapon,
Yeah.
shaping how people see things, even influencing events.
And the consequences can be huge and unpredictable.
You know, as we've been talking about these stories,
Yeah.
it struck me that espionage is at its core, a very human thing.
Absolutely.
It's driven by human emotions, human mistakes, human desires, and it often happens in this blurry area between right and wrong. It's easy to focus on the gadgets and the cloak and dagger stuff,
It is.
but it's the human element that makes it so fascinating and so scary.
For sure.
It's about understanding how people think, how they can be manipulated.
And that's important not just for spies, but for all of us.
Right.
Because we all use social engineering in some day.
We do.
Yeah, we try to persuade people, get them to trust us, to do things that benefit us.
And I guess that's true.
And while most of us try to be ethical, these stories about spies show us the potential for darkness that we all have.
It's a scary thought.
It is, but it can also be helpful.
How so?
If we understand how spies manipulate people, we can be more careful, more critical, and less likely to be tricked.
That makes sense.
That's why learning about the history of espionage is so important.
It is.
It's not just about the past, it's about understanding human behavior.
Right.
And in today's world, that's more important than ever.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of spies, I think the biggest lesson is that espionage is still relevant.
Definitely.
It's still shaping our world, even if we don't always see it.
Right.
And by understanding its history, we can be better prepared for the challenges of today and tomorrow.
And maybe by learning about the darker parts of human nature, we can try to be more careful, more aware, and more kind to each other.
That's a great thought to end on.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of notorious spies.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed it.
I hope so too.
And who knows, maybe you learned a little something about yourself along the way.
Maybe.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and watch out for the shadows.